Hello, good day, and welcome to another episode of Lab Talk. Today is Thursday, May 25th. It is 11:30 a.m. Eastern here in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, where I'm hosting live from. My name is Megan McDowell. I'm a sales enablement manager here at Thermo Fisher Scientific. And if you've joined us for previous lab talks, then you may have seen me in a lab coat doing our demos from the immersive lab. But today we're shaking things up a little bit in a couple ways. I will be your friendly host, and I'm excited to welcome Kendra Whitlich, Product Applications Manager for Constant Temperature and Shakers Lab Equipment, who will be talking to us today about sustainable orbital shaking.
All right. Thank you, Megan. As Megan said, my name is Kendra Whitlatch, and I am a product applications manager at Thermo Scientific. And, part of my job is I cover a variety of different equipment, including orbital shakers, environmental chambers, microbiological incubators, laboratory ovens, and furnaces. And today we really want to take a few minutes and talk about sustainable shaking. And as we go through the talk today, I'm going to offer 6 kind of top tips to help you achieve sustainable shaking in your laboratory. And then we're going to do a short demo of the new Solaris line of Thermo Scientific benchtop orbital shakers. And then, end up on a little bit at the last few minutes in a short Q&A session for any questions you have about orbital shaking. So let's get started. So what does it mean to embrace the practice of sustainable shaking? So for your lab and for almost every lab in the country, benchtop orbital shakers are just a real workhorse of the lab. You might be mixing large batches of buffer, you're maybe growing bacterial cultures for protein or viral expression, or maybe you're doing some DOE design of experiment plates for mammalian cell culture. But your benchtop orbital shaker must power through all of these different applications. And so to me, what does sustainable shaking mean? It really means that your benchtop shaker is ready to go the distance whenever you need it, and it's going to be efficient while doing it. So let's go through the 6 top tips to really ensure your practices for shaking are sustainable. The first main tip that I'd like to talk about is really selecting the correct shaker for the application that you're going to be providing. Depending on your application, a different shaker will work differently. And so you might need an open air shaker just flat out on the bench top to work at room temperature. Or you might need an incubated or refrigerated shaker if you want to control the environment that you're shaking. And if you're working in a CO2 incubator or a CO2 environment, we highly recommend the use of a CO2 resistant incubator to make sure that your shaker can really last. And so our first tip, shaker type. Pick the right shaker for your application. Tip number 2, look for a shaker that has a sealed design. A sealed design shaker is really going to protect your shaker for long-term use and keep your lab sustainable by only using a single shaker instead of having to replace every few years. With a sealed design, you get a sealed motor and a sealed shaking mechanism. So you are really going to protect your shaker from accidental spills, which happen in the lab all the time. It also makes it much easier to clean and disinfect your shaker regularly. Because of the sealed design, you can wipe down with 70% ethanol or isopropanol, and you can wash again with just clean, pure water to make sure your shaker is ready for daily use. At Thermo Fisher, we recommend that you clean and disinfect your shaker at least once a month, provided that you don't have a major spill. Of course, if you accidentally spill anything on your shaker, we recommend cleaning immediately. By cleaning and disinfecting regularly, you're ensuring that you prevent microbial growth. You're removing all that residual dirt, dust, laboratory buildup. All of that could contaminate your shaker and really inhibit the idea of sustainable everyday shaking. So top tip number 2, look for a shaker that has a sealed design. Tip number 3 comes into these ideas of what to look for when you're purchasing a shaker and you really need to make sure you're going to get all of the potential out of your shaker. It's important to note that the shaker orbit and the shaker speed combine to support aeration and mixing of your sample. And so this comes back to knowing the right shaker for the right application. You want to make sure that your shaker is going to be the best combination of orbit size and orbit speed to make sure that whatever it is you're mixing on your shaker gets the right amount of support and aeration that your sample needs. So if you have a large container, generally means you're going to want to mix at a slow speed with a larger orbit. And if you have a small container, like a 96 or 24 well plate, you want to shake at a really fast speed and a really small orbit. So you want to work to find a shaker that's going to fit most of your needs, but sometimes you might need a special shaker, particularly for these really small containers like 96 well plates, because you have to go at such high speeds and such small orbit to really get good mixing. And so top tip number 3, make sure you take into account the size of your containers and your vessels that you're going to be mixing, and pick a shaker with the right orbit and the right speed to get what you need. Tip number 4 has to do with true sustainability. When we talk about refrigerated benchtop shakers, most shakers on the market right now use compressor-based systems. Those compressors contain most often refrigerants that have an active global warming potential associated with them. By moving towards a refrigerant-free cooling system, your sustainable shaking efforts can be highlighted because you are no longer relying on that compressor refrigerant. As a plus, refrigerant-free cooling systems are also more efficient than traditional compressor-based systems because they utilize Peltier elements. Peltier elements completely eliminate the emission of greenhouse gases. You no longer have these noisy moving parts or compressors that are right beside your shaker. They allow you to heat and cool simultaneously using the same Peltier element, so you get really fine control over the temperature inside your shaker. Peltiers are also great because they conserve space over these bulky compressors. A lot of older model refrigerated shakers have a very large footprint, and a lot of that footprint is associated with the compressor-based cooling. By going to a Peltier or electronic cooling system, your footprint will be greatly reduced and will actually match, in most cases, the footprint of a plain incubated shaker. At Thermo, we actually have a brand new shaker called the Solaris 4000R, which is a refrigerated shaker, which is highlighted on this slide. And it actually has 58% energy reduction compared to the prior compressor-based model. And so tip number 4, when talking about sustainable shaking, if you're going to be doing refrigerated benchtop shaking, look for a refrigerant-free cooling system to really help you get that full access to sustainability. Next tip, tip number 5, and when we're talking about sustainable shaking and being able to shake over and over every day as the workhorse in your lab, one of the best tips I can give is to really plan your layout before you start shaking. Orbital shakers function most efficiently when they are loaded evenly. So before you even start securing your clamps or racks or whatever you want to put on your shaker, lay out your platform first. Take a minute, look at everything that you need to shake, and really think about the best way to balance your platform. You want to spread the load as best you can across the entire platform. And if you're trying to maximize your flexibility, you might even try looking at different options, something like a sticky mat, that will allow you to increase the flexibility of your platform, and it's super easy to get components on and off of a sticky mat. We do recommend, if you're going to use a sticky mat, make sure you double check the owner's manual of the mat and the shaker, because you want to triple check that your compatibility between your shaker and your accessories is always ready to go. Depending on the different types of shakers in your lab, different accessories may or may not fit. So it's always good, again, to make sure you have a plan before you start shaking. So top tip number 5, plan your layout. In the long run, this is a key to sustainability. And finally, tip number 6. When it comes to utilizing your shaker, if you have the option, try to create programs. By programming your shaker, you can maximize your shaker's potential to design a program exactly to meet your need. And you'll save energy in the long run by using your shaker only as much as needed. So instead of leaving your shaker running 24/7, utilize a program to turn your shaker on and off when needed. Many new models of shakers offer touchscreen simplicity, which we're going to talk about in our live demo just coming up. And this touchscreen simplicity makes it super simple to program your shaker and make your shaker work for you. And so top tip number 6, create and utilize programming when you can. So these 6 tips are really a way to make sure that your lab is utilizing everything it can for sustainable shaking. Now we're going to turn over to the Thermo Scientific Learn Lab and look at a live demo of the Solaris shaker. We have here actually 2 versions of the new Thermo Scientific Solaris shakers. On the right, we have what's an incubated Solaris shaker, which is a benchtop 4000 I model. And on the left, we have the open air 2000 model. So you'll notice it's slightly smaller footprint, and of course with the open air potential. Let's zoom in on the touchscreen, and we can talk about how to best wake up and utilize your shaker. As you can see, this is a very large touchscreen, makes it really easy to see across the lab. And if we want to set the shaker, all we have to do is just touch on the RPM, and it's going to come up, and we can set our shaking speed to whatever we like. So let's set our shaker to 100 RPM. Two quick touches, hit save, and then we can hit start. And that's all it takes to start your shaker. You'll notice the slow start. We're going to slowly ramp up to our full speed of 100 RPM. And then we are set for shaking. That's how easy it is to utilize a Solaris shaker with a simple Thermo Scientific touchscreen. So if we want to stop the shaker, we hit stop. Again, we'll slowly slow down so that we're not hurting your sample. And then let's show a super quick program. So we'll go to the programming icon. We're going to, from this screen, you could run a program that you already have, or we can create a new program like we're going to today. We'd enter a quick name, like test 1. And here we can design a program with multiple steps. So maybe we want to shake for 30 minutes at a high RPM to make sure that our sample is fully mixed. So maybe we want to shake at 250 RPM for 30 minutes. So then this would be a program, and if we want to start it, we would simply hit the play button to the left and hit start down at the bottom, and our program is ready to go. So now our shaker will run for 30 minutes, maybe while we're out of the lab, And we know when we come back and the shaker's off, our mixing is complete. So that ends the live demo of our Solaris shakers. With thanks to the Immersive Lab for doing an excellent job and letting us demo the product. And so, what did we look at today? These Solaris benchtop shakers, either the open air or the incubated refrigerated, all have this sealed motor and shaking mechanism to prevent accidental spills, makes it easy to clean and disinfect. They have nice Y platforms that come standard on the units, ship on the units ready to go. We provide screws with all of the accessories to attach directly to the platform. And the platform's easy to access so you can lay out and plan your platform before you even start to shake. The touchscreen interface, I think you'll have seen, is super easy to use, very intuitive. You can read it from across the room super easily. And you'll notice our excellent people in the Immersive Lab had on nitrile gloves the whole time, and it was still super easy to utilize that touchscreen. So that means you can leave your lab gloves on and still do all of your work. You set your speed with a couple touches and let it go. Or with even just a few more touches, you can program your shaker for maximum sustainability. Has a slow start and a slow finish to protect your samples. And it's a great everyday workhorse for your lab. So where can you learn more about sustainable shaking and the practice of sustainable shaking that we promote at Thermo Fisher? Highly recommend you visit our website at thermofisher.com/shakers. There you'll find some 3D product tours about different shakers that we have available. There's a ton of videos available on how to use these new Solaris shakers, either the incubated refrigerated models or the open air models. And there are several different application and smart notes available for you to peruse at your convenience on different aspects of shaking.